and welcome back to another video on my channel. Today's video is the third video in the Halloween type of themed videos on my channel, and I'm really excited for these videos, so let's get right into today's case. Daniel Gonzalez was born on June 21st, 1980. He was pretty close to his parents growing up, but at the age of 6 years old, Daniel's parents got a divorce, and after this, I don't believe that he had any contact, and if he did, it was very, very minimal with his father. But he did remain very close to his mother while growing up and everything like that. Now, in Daniel's younger years, he was an extremely good actor, and he loved being in school plays and things like that. He also was a very good chess player and overall a really good student. He was a really bright and smart, intelligent young boy. But he was said to have always been quite a loner, and people who knew him growing up said that you could always tell that there was something dark and a little bit off about him. Sometime in his teenage years, Daniel was actually diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. Now, that would explain his loner type behavior, and at this point he was growing quite violent, but he was starting to get treated for his illness on a regular basis, although his mother said that no matter what the doctors did, it didn't seem like they were doing enough. They didn't seem to be giving him all of the attention that he needed, and they didn't seem to be prescribing him enough drugs to keep him kind of calm, so they just weren't doing much for Daniel at this time. By the age of 24, Daniel Gonzalez has pretty much fallen completely off the deep end. He started to kind of rely on street drugs. What kind is unspecified, but he started to self-medicate with some kind of street drugs. He had zero friends, was completely unemployed, and rarely left the house. He pretty much just sat around all day playing violent video games and watching horror movies. Around this time, at the age of 24, Daniel started to grow more excessively violent. He was such bad to the point that his mother had actually written a letter to her MP saying that she didn't believe that the mental health care system around her was doing their job. She didn't think that they were treating her son the way that he needed to be treated, and he wasn't getting all the attention that he needed. And in this letter, scary enough, she actually wrote, "Does my son need to commit a murder to get treated for his mental illness?" Which is absolutely horrifying, knowing the things that took place shortly after she had written this letter. Something that I should have mentioned earlier on in this case is I believe that all of this happened in Sussex, England. Now, I hope I'm pronouncing Sussex correctly, but I will put the word on the screen so that you guys know exactly where this took place. So around this time, like I mentioned, Daniel was absolutely infatuated with horror movies, just like I'm sure most of us on this channel probably are, but his infatuation with horror movies was a little bit different than your average person. But anyways, he was absolutely obsessed with Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees. So that's Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. So around this time is also when the movies Freddy vs. Jason started to come out, and he was absolutely obsessed with those movies as well. Now, mixed with his paranoid schizophrenia, this was just a really bad combination and had a very bad effect on Daniel's mental health. At this point, like I mentioned, Daniel was growing more violent, and his mother actually said that she had caught Daniel talking to Freddy and Jason on a regular basis. He said that he could hear them in his head, but more often than not, he would be talking to Freddy, and he said that Freddy Krueger was actually telling him to do things. On September 15th, 2004, Daniel Gonzalez would say that he heard Freddy Krueger directing him to commit a murder. He waited in his bedroom until his mother had left for work, then he went down to the kitchen and he selected a knife, and after that he headed to Hillsea, Portsmouth, which is a park near his home, where he waited for his selected victims to walk by. And on this particular day, his victims were a couple in their 60s by the names of Janice and Peter King. Now, Janice and Peter actually walked through this park on a day-to-day basis. They did it for exercise, and on this day, it was just like any other when they were walking through the park for their daily exercise, not expecting anything that was about to take place. Daniel had actually hid and then walked up behind the unsuspecting couple, grabbing Peter first and holding the knife that he had selected from his mother's kitchen to Peter's face. During this time, he was yelling how he was going to kill him, but luckily, Peter was actually able to fight Daniel off. And after it seemed that Peter had had the upper hand, Daniel started to yell and scream about how he was schizophrenic and he just couldn't help himself, before completely fleeing the scene. In Daniel's head, the reason that he was not able to overpower the couple was because the knife that he had selected from his mother's kitchen was just too small. So after attempting to attack this couple and failing, Daniel actually went to a department store where he purchased a much larger knife and a hockey mask similar to that worn by Jason Voorhees. After making these purchases, he then fled to Hove, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, where he hid in a pathway. Now this wasn't in a park, it was just along a walkway that I believe connected two streets. Now at this time he did have the much larger knife with him and he was wearing a hockey mask. He was hidden in the bushes and waiting for his next victim to approach. Mary Harding was a 76-year-old retired school teacher, and that day she was actually walking home from visiting with her daughter. It is believed that Daniel had actually selected Mary because she was an older female and he felt that he could easily overpower her. So after seeing her walking down the path, Daniel jumped out from his hiding place and proceeded to stab her in the back before slitting her throat. Unfortunately, Mary passed away almost instantly, and after committing this murder, Daniel fled the scene, went back to his house, locked himself in his room, and proceeded to write little sticky notes promising himself that this was what he was going to do from now on. Like this was some kind of job that he needed to do, and he was promising himself that in the future he would continue to do so. The following day, September 16th, I believe that Daniel slept most of the day, but once he got out of bed, he went to a bar and began to drink heavily. He was actually celebrating the previous day and what he had done the previous day. At some point during that night, he allegedly took some kind of street drug, which is never a good idea, but it is especially not a good idea for somebody with such severe mental illness as Daniel did have. Around 5 a.m. on September 17th, after leaving the bar, Daniel was now high and drunk, walking through the streets, and that is when he came across a man by the name of Kevin Malloy. Kevin Malloy was 46 years old, and I believe that he was leaving a pub that was now closed at the time. He was much larger than Daniel, but he was heavily intoxicated, making it quite easy for Daniel to overtake him. After overpowering Kevin, Daniel proceeded to stab him in the face, the neck, and the torso with a pair of scissors that he had previously stolen from a department store. After this, he left Kevin's body there and again fled the scene, but this time he would go on to do much more damage. By 7 a.m., Daniel had completely fled the scene and was now on a rampage. He had broken into the home of a man by the name of Kumis Constantino. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Now, the two men had actually gotten into an altercation within the home, but Kumis was able to overpower Daniel, although Daniel did stab Kumis in the arm before fleeing the scene. But luckily, Kumis did survive the stab wound, and nobody else within the home was hurt at this time. By 8 a.m., Daniel was now in Highgate, where he was trying to gain access to multiple homes. Derek and Jean Robinson were two very well-respected retired members of the community. They were seniors, and they had this routine that they did every single day where they would wake up and sit down and have breakfast with one another, but everybody who knew this couple said that they were just so nice. They were some of the nicest people you would ever meet. They just wanted the best for everybody, and they wanted to help everybody in every situation that they possibly could. So this day, like any other day, the couple was sitting down eating breakfast when they got a knock at the door. Derek went to open the door, and standing at his front door was Daniel Gonzalez. He was completely covered in blood, and Derek and Jean actually thought that he could have possibly been hurt and needed help. So being the kind couple that they were, they opened the door to let Daniel come in or ask what they could do for him, and Daniel at this point immediately started to attack Derek. He stabbed him multiple times, but strangely enough, after killing Derek, Daniel said that he was overcome with a feeling of guilt. He felt really bad for Jean after she had watched him murder her husband, so he wanted to kill her as fast as possible. So after attacking her husband, he then began to stab Jean as violently and quickly as he could, trying to make her death as minimal, he just wanted her to not be hurting anymore, basically was how he explained it. Now, I just thought that part of information was a little bit strange. It's like he had this overcoming feeling to kill these people or whatever he was using to explain this, and then on the last person that he killed, he felt very guilty. But anyways, after murdering the Robinsons, Daniel then proceeded to go upstairs and have a shower in the Robinsons' home. But at this time, while Daniel was in the shower, the Robinsons' interior decorator actually showed up at the home. And he knocked on the door multiple times, but then they didn't answer. He used his key to open the door and come in. And that is where he found the bodies of both Jean and Derek Robinson. Now he could hear the shower running upstairs, and that is when Daniel, completely butt naked and covered in blood, fled the home. Of course, the interior decorator called the police, and Daniel Gonzalez was arrested on September 17th at 12 p.m. When brought in by police, Daniel had actually told the police that he was instructed by Freddy Krueger himself to carry out these murders. He also said that now he had committed the murders, he felt as if he was cleansed, and he described carrying out the murders as feeling orgasmic. While awaiting trial, Daniel Gonzalez actually tried to bite himself to death, and he was so dangerous that any policemen or anybody who had to deal with him were always fully suited in riot gear. Daniel Gonzalez committed suicide on August 9th, 2007. He had cut himself with the edge of a broken CD case that he had found inside of his prison cell. My heart sincerely goes out to all of the families and loved ones of the people who were so brutally taken away from us in this case. This is just such a tragic and brutal way to go, and I just can't even imagine what the families and loved ones of these people were going through at this time. But not only that, my heart also goes out to Daniel Gonzalez's mother, because I think more times than not lately, the mental health care department really lets a lot of people down, and in many of these situations where somebody is so severely mentally ill, if they'd just been given the proper treatment or the attention that they needed, things like this could have been possibly avoided. Now, I'm not saying that is for sure, but I do just think that it is so upsetting that things like this do happen when sometimes they could be avoided. But I did just think that this case would be interesting to cover around Halloween, because he is actually known as the Freddy Krueger killer. Now, that is the killer from Nightmare on Elm Street, which is a movie that people do tend to watch around Halloween. It was one of my favorite horror movies way back when, so I just thought that this was an interesting case because I actually hadn't heard of it until recently. But guys, that brings us to the end of this video. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to comment down below what you would like to see in my future videos, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on that notification bell so that you don't miss any future videos from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys!